Hello, everybody, and welcome to the premiere of Rough Ice Podcast. We are a podcast that is going to start interviewing hockey players from semi-professional, professional guys that are just going up and stuff. And I got my first, very excited because I got my first guest here. Number, was it 18 there, Jordan? 18, right?
Yep.
Yep,
Yes.
number
Yep.
18, Jorin Welsh, who played 4 years for the Tulsa Oilers, and he also did, was it 4 years or 5? 4 years for the Tulsa Oilers, and then you did 5 years for the Listowel Cyclones in the Junior B before going down. So, Jordan, how have you been? It's been, last time I saw you, I was probably 9 or 10 years old at the hockey rink back in Tulsa when I lived there. So, how are things with you?
Oh, good. Yeah. Life's busy. Got wife and 3 kids, and the 2 youngest are keeping us busy, running around to their sports. So, yeah.
So, are you still in hockey, or do you do other things? Like, do you do hockey in the wintertime with the kids, or are you playing still, or not really?
Not playing at all, really. Myself, I've been out helping coach the kids. So last year I was with my son Colton, who was 13 at the time, helping out with his team, and this year I'm going to help out with Brindley, who's 12 this year, and so she plays with the boys here in LaSalle as well. So going to help
So
out with that too.
you're getting kind of a bit of a different perspective. Once you're a player now you're coaching hockey, so you kind of get both sides of it now. So you're a small town guy. You grew up in Arthur, Ontario. You started off playing for the Listowel Cyclones in, now it's called the GOJHL, which is the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. But at your time, it was, I believe, the Midwestern Junior Hockey League is what you
Yep.
played.
Yep.
So, what attracted you? So, did you have a favorite team growing up, or did you watch? Everybody has that favorite NHL team that they watched. How did that start with you?
So growing up, obviously at the time, Edmonton was starting to be a strong team, and between Gretzky and Messier and that whole group of players, that was kind of my team at that time. Watching them finally break through and win some Stanley Cups. So
And now Edmonton's in the finals.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they're, yeah.
Here for a different team now. Over the years, I moved on, and while Messier went at one point to Vancouver, and when Pavel Bure was there, so I've kind of become a Vancouver fan. So.
Oh, so you're a Vancouver. Okay, so at least you're not a Toronto fan, because I'm a Montreal fan, and I could tell you the rivalry that happens between us at every single hockey game, it just gets chaotic there. So
Yeah.
you played for Listowel, so you kind of watched Edmonton growing up. You played for Listowel. So what was your first couple of years joining Junior B, and what did you learn from just playing there?
Yeah. So I played my minor hockey in Arthur, where I grew up, and had a good group of friends I played with there. We had a bit of success. My final year there, we went to the Ontario finals and lost, and then I went on and started playing in Listowel, and it was a good experience as a young player. I was 15 moving into the league, so the years that I was 15, 16 years old, we didn't have that strong a team. So it wasn't about the winning, that's for sure, but it was still a good group of guys, and I had Perry Ohm there with me. He was actually a year younger than me, so we were kind of young guys in the league starting out at that time. So it was just a good group of guys. It was tough years as far as wins and losses for the first 2 years, but the players we played with, the game was still enjoyable at least.
And did you, when you played Junior B, obviously in today's world, with social media going on, kids have access to Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's just a different perspective of players trying to get into play professional hockey. So how did you do it back then? Like, did you have a scout, or were you on your own just looking for teams to move out, or how did that work for you?
My career kind of just unfolded almost naturally. Like I played my 5 years in Listowel. My last 2 years, I actually was going to school in Hamilton. I was attending Mohawk College. Listowel was good enough to offer me my release if I wanted to go and play in the Golden Horseshoe League. So I actually went out to tryouts. I went to St. Catharines and I went to go out in Hamilton. But the night I went to go out there, they actually had canceled and moved their tryout date. So I ended up not going out in Hamilton and ended up just sticking it out in Listowel. So
And Listowel's on the map for that TV show Letterkenny, as we all know about it now. I talked to all
yeah,
my friends that are down in the States, and they love the show. They're now into this Shoresy thing, and they think that's how hockey is here in Canada. That's how they think that they imagine it is, right? So playing junior B, obviously you went to the University of Windsor after that, and you did a couple of years there. How did the junior B league, and even just as yourself as a player, how did it prepare you for as we go on to this podcast here, you played, your 4 years in Tulsa, which was at the time in 1992 was the New Central Hockey League.
mm-hmm.
But before you went there, going from transitioning from a junior B to now a university player, how much did that either help you or did you kind of change your playing style when you went to Windsor?
Um, I kind of continued on with my playing style. It's a big jump. So the first 2 years in Listowel were a little tough, and then they started getting better. And we actually attracted. It seemed to be a lot of guys from Kincardine and up that way, and some guys were a year or two older than me and moved on. And actually, that's how I ended up at the University of Windsor. Kyle McMillan and McKegney had already moved from Listowel, playing in Listowel, down to the University of Windsor, and were playing at the University of Windsor. So they kind of introduced me to the thought of going to university and playing university hockey. Introduced me to the coach down here at the time was Rick Cranker. Met with him and had a visit of the campus and the facilities. At that time, the facilities weren't the draw, but having friends here and moving, made that transition a little better. But it's a big jump. Moving from junior B to university hockey is a huge jump. The speed, the size of the guys, even you look at, we were one of the first groups as I was playing at the university that we got the opportunity to play in Kitchener at the time against the World Juniors as they prepared for the World Junior Tournament. So I did that for 2 years. They kind of selected an Ontario All-Star team, and we'd play against the World Juniors. But the university players they're a couple years older than junior. Generally, everybody's kind of finishing up around 22 years old. So just those extra couple years, it brings, some maturity both in the way the games play, but also their physical style and size. So
And
it was a big jump from junior.
no, and that's probably one of your first times moving out and being by yourself as well, I would imagine, correct?
Yeah, I was fortunate when I played in Listowel. The first 3 years I was at home in Arthur with my parents, but then the last two I was in Hamilton again
Right.
with friends, but out on my own anyway.
And did that help? Did that help you? Like, how did you? So after you did your University of Windsor, you prepared for that. You said the speed, the physicality was a lot better compared, or not better, but it's just more of a progression from junior B
Yeah.
to university. So how did a small town guy like you even end up in Tulsa, for that matter? I mean, like I'm Canadian and I ended up in Tulsa, but that it was not because of hockey; it's because of family, right? But
Yeah.
how did a guy like you even like? Did you even know there's a hockey team there, or were you thinking like, why am I going to Oklahoma to play
Yeah.
there? Like, what's your story there?
So yeah, it's pretty funny. Again, my first year at university here, so I was in Windsor for what ended up being 3.5 years. Um, my first year, we weren't the strongest team in the league, but we were competitive. And then for my second, third, and my fourth year, we got to grow and be quite competitive. My last year, we won the Ontario Championship, University Championship. So again, just the style of play, the speed of it prepared me, to move to the States. But I remember being on the bus. Who knows where we were going? somewhere in Ontario anyway, and I'm reading, the old school print newspaper, Hockey News. And I'm looking in the back, and there's, I don't know if it was an advertisement or just kind of you know, this ad about the Western Professional Hockey League. And I remember thinking to myself, and I'm reading about San Antonio and San Angelo and Amarillo and all these, El Paso. And I'm thinking, who on earth ends up playing in this Western Professional League? And whatever, that was the end of it. Kind of moved on, never really thought about it again. And then we were having a successful year. We won the Ontario Championship, and then we went to Saskatoon to play in the Nationals. And that's where I started to hear or have contact from a lot of scouts for the minor leagues, and even NHL and some American League scouts. Not that there was any serious interest, but at least some communication there. And I ended up being recruited by Gary Unger, and at the time he had a goaltender, Tony Martino. He came up and kind of did an Ontario tour and met with different university teams and whatnot, and they traveled us down along with a Jeff Goldie and a Jeff Mancini, who Goldie played at the University of Waterloo and Mancini was in London at Western. So those two and Chris Charlin from the University of Windsor, we went down and had a look around Albuquerque, New Mexico. And in meeting with Gary and his thoughts and his interest in us as players, that's where I ended up signing and playing my first year of minor pro.
So you played for the New Mexican Scorpions for it was a full season, correct?
Yeah, it was my first year. Yeah.
And I'm not really familiar with the WPHL, so you might have to fill me in on that. Was that very similar to the style of play that the Central Hockey League had, or was it more like, how here in Canada we have the Western Ontario or the Western Hockey League, the Ontario Hockey League, and the Quebec Majors, and if everybody that knows hockey knows that the Western guys play a more physical game compared to the Ontario guys. Was it something similar to that, or was it a little bit different?
Um, Probably somewhat similar, but the thing with the leagues down there at the time, you had the Western Pro League, and I don't know how many teams. There may have been 12 to close to 16 teams in the Western Pro League at the time, and the Central was smaller. There was only 6 or 8 teams, maybe
Correct.
8 teams. So it just, there was kind of newer teams, and they would kind of come and go in the Western Pro League. But even the Central, it varied year to year. Some years, teams like Wichita would load up on every tough guy that was looking to make a couple $100 a week, and it would be a tough, hard nosed, keep your head up kind of season, let alone game to game. And then other years it wouldn't be too bad, and teams would try to, they'd swing back the other way, looking for more skilled guys and trying to just, outskate those other guys.
And like you said, you were fortunate. You had really two good coaches when you went to Tulsa. You had Sean Clouston. He played for the Tulsa Oilers during the CHL, so he had kind of that a little bit of a background. And then he got let go, and then Gary Unger kind of came in and replaced him. But hockey is hockey. I mean, it doesn't matter if the coach lasts 2 years or 5 years. That's just the way the sport is. I mean, it doesn't matter what sport you're in, whether you're a player or a manager or whatever. People know that it's just it's a tough gig no matter what side of it is, because you don't know whether you're going to be around for 5 years, 2 years, 1 year. You just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I think Sean Clouston. Let's go to him. So Sean Clouston was your coach. He was probably not much older than the rest of the team there. You had some pretty big names like Doug Lawrence that played for you guys, Dallas Anderson. You had your other enforcer, Curtis Voth, who was he was trying to try to still make a name for himself towards that. So did you know these guys coming in? Like, did you know who you're going to be? Did you hear about like Doug Lawrence or, because he's a famous name. He played for the Oklahoma City Blazers. He was a big name, right? You had Curtis Voth, who he was a fighter. He went around. There's guys like Roy Hall or is it Roy Halladay? I believe what his name was, or
Yeah,
um,
yeah, Holiday. Yeah, yeah.
Holiday, right? But he was playing. They had a little bit of a rivalry and stuff, right? So you had your rivalries with Wichita and things like that. But going in, your Sean Cluson's your head coach. How was he like when you first came in your first season? Again, coming from University of Windsor now. Now you're you paid for your 1 year at the WPHL. Now you're at the
Mhm.
new Central Hockey League. Did your style of play change again, or did you kind of just keep your mindset and said, okay, this is how I'm going to be now for the rest of my career?
Yeah. So kind of the connection there, like to move from New Mexico to Tulsa. Gary had coached Sean when they won the Central League championship in '92,
I think it was like
or it was
93 or
early.
four, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Um, and Sean was actually coaching in San Angelo the year before when I was playing in New Mexico. So Gary got let go in New Mexico 3/4 of the way or more through the year. And then he was heading back to Tulsa, and he had coached there before and been there before. So he had that connection there, as well as the connection with Sean Clouston. So Slino and Craig Hamlin were heading back to play in Tulsa as well. So I had that connection with them. And so Chris Charlin and I went there to try out. And that's Sean ended up liking my style of play. My first couple years, I played with Brad Cook was my defense partner for a bit, and really my focus early it was kind of the same. And as I moved up in leagues from junior to university and university to the pro game, I focused on my plus minus. I always just tried to be not out there, not getting scored on, and be out there for more times when we did score. And it ended up, I accumulated a few points. But really that was my focus was kind of on my plus minus. And I did well with that for my first few years. And always, as my career went on, there was years where it was down a little, but overall, that was always one of my focuses.
And Sly Nod was your roommate for a little bit, from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, there was a little bit. Yeah, the first summer that I ended up staying down there, I roomed with Sly for a little bit. So,
Yeah, he's my next interview, so he wanted me to let you know to say hello. So he was just
oh,
letting
there you
me know,
go.
yeah. So let him know that we were roommates and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Going back to the Sean Clouston as your head coach, Gary Unger, you said, kind of coached or taught him how to coach and stuff. So they pretty much had similar coaching styles, would you say? Because Sean kind of looked up, or was it a little bit different?
It was different. It was different. Gary was a great guy. He was a motivator, but he focused a lot on just the flow of the game, and he tried to build off of whatever the players' strengths were, and put them in situations where they could succeed. Um, he was just he was fun to play for, but it was a lot more loose, and whatever you could bring to the game, bring to the game. Where Sean, on the other hand, he was probably the best X and O prepared game plan coach that I had. Like, he had expectations of, you need to be here. This is what we're going to do. So he was very much a more methodical, just an X and O's coach. Is where, again, but looking back, and even at the time, I could see with the players you play with, there's such a wide variety of why they end up playing in the minors versus the next level up in the American League, or even in the NHL, because certain players had NHL speed and NHL shots, but you could play with them and see they just, when they picked a puck up or whatever it was, they wouldn't see the ice the way they would need to at that level, but they could skate that fast. And where other players, on the other hand, maybe weren't the quickest at that level, but they just knew where to be and why to be there, and just knew where the puck was going to go. And, but you played with different players, brought different things to the table. You mentioned, Curtis Voth, Dallas Anderson, like they brought that edgy game. And, Curtis he was a funny guy because he was so quiet, real nice guy, but kind of kept to himself, just a quiet guy. Where Dallas, on the other hand, he was outgoing and funny and loud and obnoxious in other players' faces, and he loved that thing, like that role. But there was a guy there that was close to, him and Wade Brookbank would always have battles, right? And Brookbank ended up playing in the NHL, and Dallas was close as well. Dallas went to, I think it was Edmonton's rookie camps. He ended up getting hurt, unfortunately, and I think that really set him back. But he had NHL speed. He could shoot the puck, and obviously didn't mind mixing it up. So,
and you go back to the NHL, or those guys that had that NHL, like Luc Beausoleil. He was like that top notch player that was very technical when he skated, and even I go back to the old VHS tapes and watching the way he was shooting the puck and stuff. But he was just a small guy, right? Like at the
yeah.
end of the day, like he was just a small guy, right? And I think that, I wouldn't say hurt him, because like he was, he became another big fan in Tulsa, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but you had guys like that, right? So tell me about that. Like you had 4 years at Tulsa. So the first 2 years you were not an assistant, correct? Or an alternate captain, I guess
Yeah.
they called it
No,
back
the
then.
first 2 years I wasn't. Yeah.
Right. And then so you had guys like, let's go back to Doug Lawrence and Luc Beausoleil. So you got some, veteran players that are on the team, right? You had even Gary Unger as your coach the last couple of years. How was it working with those guys? Did you look up to them? Like you were really like, when I was a kid, it's funny that I go to this because when I was a kid, everybody was like, well, what's your favorite NHL team? And I said, well, I didn't grow up on NHL. I grew up on CHL because Oklahoma didn't have at the time a professional sports team. So that was the professional sports team, right? You had
Yeah.
4,500 fans filling up the arena, right? That, I think we were the only ones that had the Canadian shirts, and, like our family was the only one that's probably from Canada that was there. My dad was, he was more into the technicality of the game and all that stuff, right? But let's go back to that. So you had veteran guys like, like I said, Luc Beausoleil, who I believe was captain at the time. Doug Lawrence was assistant captain at the time as well. So you had two of those guys. I don't remember who the third one was for alternate.
Probably like Craig Hamlin.
Or Craig Hamlin, right? Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. You had guys like that. Even Sly Nod there, and
Fly, yeah.
how was it like working with these guys that you're a rookie guy, you're coming in, you have big names like that light up the make the show almost, right? But how was that as a player?
Yeah, for sure. When you're new, again, I was fortunate. I was coming out of university, and I had finished junior before I went to university. So I was 24, 25 by the time I was getting to Tulsa. And yeah, you look up to guys that have played at that level for a while. And between Sly and Craig Hamlin, Dougie, of course. Dougie is a character. He's a great guy. He's funny. He's intense. He expects a lot of himself, but through that, he was never really an in-your-face kind of guy, but there was an expectation, and because he was going as hard as he could, he expected everybody else to follow suit. We had Chris Smith,
Yep.
who had played at Michigan State, and he was another leader on the team. Marty Diamond, my first year or two, was there, and again, he was a leader and coming in. But I don't know, those guys were. Dougie was great. Dougie, a character all the time, on the ice, off the ice, just a fun guy to be around. But like I said, he went hard, and he expected everybody else to do that as well. And he was great at building guys up, and sometimes he was half pulling your leg, but whatever, he made you feel good about yourself, and so it was good. Craig Hamlin was he was a real good player to play with. And I found as a defenseman looking for somebody to move the puck to. Craig was a smooth skater. He had great hands, handled the puck, could score, but he was somebody that you were just looking for, and you knew he was going to get open, and he was in the right places to give him the puck. So, and again, Luc Beausoleil, yeah, at that time, a lot of players ended up in the minors at that time because it was clutch and grab and manhandle people. Like not everybody's the size of Ed Jovanovski and Darian Hatcher and all those guys. So you kind of end up in the minor leagues because you have the skill. In today's game, a lot of those guys maybe would have had a lot better chance to go further because it wasn't based so much on size.
And the game has changed so much. Like '90s, I laugh because you go back to the Doug Lawrence and it's the Jofa helmet with the flow. It's the '90s. You guys all had your highlighted hair. And that's what. But it was fun, right? It was fun
It
old
was
school
fun.
hockey, right?
Yeah.
And but so there was like we said, it was the Central Hockey League, or they renamed it at the time. They're coming back. They brought the Central Hockey League back, so it's called the New Central Hockey League. But that's what '90s hockey was. It was two-line pass, which a lot of kids don't understand what that is even now in
Yeah.
today's world, right? But you had the two-line offside pass, so it was a little bit, I wouldn't even say slower. It was just a different type of game, what it is today. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but even in today's game, like I look at even some of the junior stuff and things like that. When I watch, you guys had as a team, you guys were like this, and if one guy went in hard and somebody took him out, you guys were all there, right? You guys
Yeah.
all had each other's backs, right? And I feel, I'm not saying it's kind of going away, but they're trying to get rid of that enforcer because the game is so fast. So like, when you played versus today, like, do you find it? Do you like that kind of style of play better back then, or has it kind of just evolved the way it is now? Like, what would you say in as a player yourself?
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's things you enjoy about the game of old, and there's things that they brought into the game and the speed of the game. You got to admire the speed of the game, but um, you miss a bit of the toughness and even just the body contact. I don't understand why some, especially at the junior level, why more of them don't play the body. Because you can make such an easy name for yourself nowadays because half the time what would have been a 5-on-5 line brawl back when we played, you're lucky if somebody comes in and gives somebody a face wash at a major junior game. Like it's sometimes hard to watch, like, but the game it's just changed so much. And that was one of the things that was fun about playing, and there's just the respect you had for guys coming in that were new to the team. That I don't know, I explained to you know people I work with or friends or whatever that ask about it. You had that group of 18 guys that immediately you had that connection with it. Not to say you were really really tight with everybody, because not everybody's you know is close and tight, but when it came to the rink and being on the ice, yeah, a guy could show up that afternoon, and if somebody's doing you dirty, they're dropping the gloves and have your back that night, kind of thing. So that always impressed me with the camaraderie of playing with those guys at that level.
And I think even having, like you said, like Gary Unger, he was that kind of like that rough and, like that kind of old school hockey. But that's how he played. Like he played for the St. Louis Blues back for the NHL back in, I believe it was the '70s.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how he was, right? Like that's how he kind of grew up, right? Was that rough and tough? You kind of don't take, you kind of grab a number and that's how it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had guys like, and there's a couple of big guys, but I think also, you guys were, like Canada is a big country, but you like 90% of the players you guys were from Canada anyways, right?
Yeah,
Like so you guys were all
yeah.
just Canadian brothers that came together in Oklahoma, with a couple of odd guys that, were from the States that, did a university career, went down there. But you guys were just a bunch of Canadian guys that, you guys looked up to each other like family, really. I would say even if I was in that position, like I never got the opportunity to play hockey because I grew up in Oklahoma, But I would just say, like, even coming back to Canada and playing like house league and stuff like that, we like that's how it was, right? You guys were just family because you guys didn't know anybody else, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you spend so much time together. You're at the rink every day, basically. You're lucky, maybe halfway through the season or whatever, you start to get a day off, one day off a week at most, right? So you're with each other a lot. You get to know each other well. Yeah, I don't know. And again, just characters and good guys, good people. Um, I don't know. In the hockey world, small. One year you're playing against guys and you really think you can't stand them or whatever, and the next year you're playing with them and you realize, hey, this guy's a great guy, and you know, I didn't
But
like him because he plays a tough game and he's always running into you or whatever the case may be, right?
yeah, yeah, it's exactly what it is, right? Because you're being at that professional level. Even at junior B, you go from team to team, right? So you're kind of always kind of prepared for that because one year you might be playing against this guy, and the next year you could be playing against or with this guy, right? You just never know.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was going to say is the Tulsa aspect, or even the CHL aspect. It was the old school mentality. You had, like I said, 4,500 fans that just showed up because 90% of them liked the fighting and aspect of it and stuff. And I don't know if you remember this, but I'll never forget this. But Dallas, I don't recall if you were on the team. Now, don't forget, I was like 9 or 10 years old, right? And I grew up, so my ears might be a little bit mixed up. But something happened, and Dallas Anderson calls to pile up in the middle of the ice. I don't know if you were there or not, but there was a time where
Oh,
he did that. And then there was a guy that you had that also played with you, John Cameron. And you
yeah.
had guys like Mike Moore, and then you had a really outstanding, actually two goalies throughout when you played there. Was Rod Branch. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if he was a very, I would say, stick in your face type of goalie, where you might be going on like one with the guy, and he'd always put his stick out in front of you to try to wave it. And you don't see that anymore, even in hockey in
No.
today's world, right? And then you had guys like Chad Erickson, um,
Mm-hmm.
who also was your goalie. And
Yeah.
like I said, two phenomenal, like, back to, you had Rod Branch, who was with the Kamloops Blazers for the WHL. I believe he won the championship with them, but I don't recall that. But he
I
came down.
couldn't
He was a
tell you for sure.
really outstanding goalie. Having two goalies like that, and you're a defenseman, what in your mind, like, was that it? Like, did you guys think that in a couple of years you guys are going to go on and win the championship, or because there's a lot of good teams. You had Oklahoma City, which was always a top three team. Wichita Thunder was always a top three team, right? Like, those were your two. You had the Topeka Scarecrows, right?
Yeah.
They're not around anymore. You had guys like that. I think the one was the Iguanas or something like that. That was
San
there.
Antonio. Yeah.
Yep, San Antonio, right? So you had things, but the top three teams were Wichita, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. Did you know the success of these guys, of the team, before you showed up? Like, how good Tulsa was, or not really?
Not really. The first year coming in, I was just again young, didn't really know much about the league from league to league. I don't know if it was the Colonial League or up here around in Michigan, right? And then they became the United League. Um, yeah, moving from the Western Pro to the Central, I didn't know a whole lot about it. And again, like not being around, as you're around a couple years, you get to know all the players and who they are and what who you can kind of poke and who's guys you probably should stay away from, things like that. But um, yeah, I don't know. Every year you go in with the hopes to win. Like I knew we always had good teams. And again, it started with goaltending. Chad Erickson was a, he'd been around a while. He was a veteran guy. He was quiet, just a, good leader. Um, Young guy that came in. I ran into him last year, Jamie Ronayne. He come in. He come out of D3 school in New York, and so I actually hung around with Jamie a lot. So it was fun to see him. Maybe not last year, the year before. I ran into him in a tournament in Michigan. So Yeah, and then Rod Branch. It all starts with good goaltending, and yeah.
And I think even the rivalry, like let's go to even Oklahoma City versus Tulsa. I mean, you had Doug Sauter, who was the head coach of
Hmm.
Oklahoma City, right? Another old school, rough and tough guy from Alberta, right? So you had two really old school guys. What was does even when Gary Unger was coaching, did he kind of prep you for going against somebody like Doug Sauter as a coach? Like, because I'm sure, like like hockey's hockey. At the end of the day, you guys are, you might be fighting on the the ice or whatever, and like 10 years down the later, you guys are all having beers or whatever, and hanging out and talking about the all good old days. But Doug Sauter was he was a fantastic coach for Oklahoma City. Like he brought those guys championships, in that Tulsa Oklahoma City rivalry. So going through that, like how do you prepare as a defenseman, who are going against Oklahoma City with Doug Sauter, who had a really strong power forward. Those guys, they were gritty, they in your face, like you said, old school Central Hockey League type of play. So how did you go into that?
Yeah, it was kind of an eye opener. And again, my first year when I was in New Mexico, Sean McKegney, who I had played with in junior, and then at the University of Windsor with, he was in Oklahoma City. So I talked to him about it, and he was a character, and he was. I was talking to him on the phone about it. He was talking about everything from the weather, how it, he goes, how windy it is in Oklahoma City, and then the fans are nuts, and it was a good place to play. Like they drew big crowds. They'd average around, I think it was around 10,000 fans a game, and again, like in Tulsa, we did well. Like we on the weekend through the week, wouldn't draw that big, but on the weekends you'd fill the convention center and have 7,100 people in there. So those were good games. But so my buddy's telling me about McKegney's telling me about Oklahoma City, and he wasn't an overly big guy, scored a bit, but he wouldn't back down from anybody. And he's telling me that he gets into a tussle with somebody, gets thumped pretty good, and he goes, I'm leaking, heading off the ice, and he goes, and the fans are going bananas, thinking that I've done such a great job. And he goes, I just got my ass kicked on the ice, like so. Going into Oklahoma City, it was intimidating again because they've got 10,000 people. They had always had good teams. Yeah, and I don't know. You had players like Joe Burton, right? Who, again, kind of like a Luc Beausoleil, not big in stature, but just a smart hockey player. And you turn your back for half a second, and he's behind you and scoring a goal or whatever. But I don't know. I'm trying to think different players again, like the Wade Brookbank. Yeah, they always had a good mix of players that you had to watch. They put the puck in the net, and a good mix of players that provided that toughness where you couldn't just push them around either. So um, interesting place to play. It got again as after year 3 and year 4 were a lot better than year 1 and 2 going into Oklahoma City. I think the last year I don't know if we won every game, but we sure won more than we lost. So that was a lot better feeling. Sometimes it was a tough place to play. That's for sure.
And it's funny because when I was a kid, it was always like lined up at the convention center, the old Tulsa Convention Center. To go in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we always had our like it was almost like we did a regular thing. Like again, growing up in Canada, my dad was focused on two things: church and hockey, and that was it, right? Like you had to. We were at the rink almost every weekend at Tulsa. My friends that I went to elementary school with, they've never heard of they've heard of hockey, but they think it snows like 24/7 in Canada.
Yeah.
That's what all we do and stuff. But we brought them to the games, and we had our schedule. Every time we show up to the game, we get our Dippin' Dots, we get our mini sticks, and every period when you guys were during the intermission, we'd be outside playing mini sticks, or we'd watch even I think things now that would never happen in today's world. Like you got I don't know if you remember this, but they used to do the shopping cart races. Do you
Oh yeah.
remember that, where they put the guy with a helmet, the other guy? Like that would never fly in today's world, right? And
Yeah.
there's things that you go and you look back, and it's like, it was fun, and the entertainment value you got back then versus, there wasn't social media, like I said, so the teams didn't have the Instagram or the Facebook or like the website was just coming in because internet was still a new thing and stuff, right?
Yep.
But as a player, you like, junior B, going back to Listowel for a second here, you know Listowel has always done, you probably played at the old barn where they filled it up every time, right?
Well,
We're, and it's not there anymore because we now have the new arena
yeah,
here,
that's a
but
beautiful new arena they have
it is
there.
very nice, right? But like you go to that, and then you go to Tulsa, or even you play in Oklahoma City. Were you expecting to have the fans follow you guys like that? Like, were you expecting to go to Oklahoma and you're like, oh, maybe I'd be lucky to see 500 people, and you show up and there's 4,500 fans, cheering you guys on? Was that expectation as a player, or do you not really think about that going in?
Didn't really think about it. I had no idea as far as attendance and whatnot. But Tulsa was a great city, and obviously it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're winning, that obviously helps. But it was funny because, again, Oklahoma, it's a football state, so
Yep.
attendance always grew once you got past Christmas.
Yep.
Um, so it was one of those things. But the convention center was a great place to play. I enjoyed it. For my style of play, it was a little smaller ice. The boards crashed nice, had a nice big wave when you ran somebody into it. But the fans were close. It had a low ceiling, so it was loud. Like when it was full, it was a loud. I always looked at it. It was a mini Joe Louis arena,
It was,
right? Because
and no, go
it
ahead.
had the concourse halfway up and around. Exact same layout as Joe Louis Arena had, but it just on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Now, before I just wrap things up with you, I just got a few more questions to ask you. Um, so you had Mike Moore playing on your bench, and like I said, those fighting guys. You weren't really a fighter going into to play for these teams. Like, you were more of a cleaner player. If you had to take a penalty or so, was that more your style of play? Like, you weren't really a big fighter, but you were very physical when you played. Um, is that something that you kind of did? Because a lot of kids, even today's world, don't even know what tie downs are for hockey. I mean, like, I tell them, like, are you like, they can't fight anymore, right? But I mean, like, they don't even know what tie downs are, right? So, like,
Yeah,
but things like that. So, like, the fighting aspect of it. Some guys are, like, you had guys like Dallas Anderson, like we said, Curtis Voth, even Doug Lawrence they wouldn't, hesitate to scrap, right? You had a couple of fights with Tulsa in your couple of years that you played. How do you prepare for that? Like, were you a fighter growing up, like, playing junior B, or were you more just that you just want to get, like, the big hits and play clean and play a defensive strategy there?
yeah. That was always kind of. I didn't never let on. I was a huge fighter or whatever. Generally, when I was fighting, was either I had to, based on somebody's running the goalie or whatever, or I was extremely pissed off. Like that was it. I never enjoyed sitting in the penalty box for that long. I don't know. It wasn't my thing. For some guys, it was their thing, and that's what they did. And my hat was always off to those guys because that was always a tough role to fill. But for me, it was playing physical. I like to throw the body. I like getting my points too, but that wasn't always my goal. It kind of worked out, and as my career went on, I got more opportunities to play on the power play and whatnot, and got out there on the ice in key times. So, but no, the physical play was always a big part of mine. I don't know. Most of my fighting, I always enjoyed fighting more in lacrosse than hockey. I don't know. It was more 2 feet on the floor and not that risk of somebody upending you on the ice and hurt yourself in the fall.
Oh no, I seen some of those lacrosse fights, man. The way they whack each other in the back of the shins and all that stuff, that gives me quivers. I mean, I can tell you that right now. So playing professional, like, playing for Tulsa, you played for, you got traded to Alabama, Fort Worth Brahmas, and then you did your final year back in Windsor. But a lot of players, like, let's be honest here. There's only maybe one or two kids from Ontario that are making the NHL per year, right? It's such a small percentage of guys that are actually making it to the NHL. How do you prepare yourself not knowing that you're not going to get there, but did you always have just kind of a backup plan and to say, okay, you know what, if I don't make a career out of this, like how would you, if kids asked you, like, what do I do in today's world, what would you say to them?
Um, I don't know. Part of the kids that I'm coaching are starting to get, they're about to hit with my son's age. They're starting to get into high school or whatever. I don't know. I never had a plan of I'm going to make it somewhere in hockey, and I always just, and this is how I try to coach the kids, is just put your best effort out there, work at it, try to be the best that you can be, and if your best is you end up playing junior C hockey or you don't even play junior hockey, do your best. And that's all. And for me, mine just seemed to naturally unfold. I went from minor hockey to playing junior in Listowel. And when that road was coming to an end, I had the opportunity to go play university hockey and did well and had a little bit of success at university. And when that road was coming to an end, the next road kind of unfolded and I had the opportunity to go to the States and play. So I don't know, like, so for my kids and the kids I coach, it's just kind of put in your best effort. You never know what opportunities are going to come up for you. Like whether it's playing sports at the university level, that's a high level of sports. Not many people get to say they play university sports. So again, if that's where you get to and that's where it ends, congratulations, you made it to a high level of hockey. And anything above that, appreciate it. I don't know. I think it's one of those things that I don't know. I never had that plan of, oh, I'm a really good hockey player and I'm going to make money. And again, we didn't do it for the money. You got by, you got paid enough money. Fortunately enough, if you're a decent enough player, you had more than, just spending money. I was able to pay off my school loans and buy a vehicle and whatever. So that was kind of why I stuck it out. And 7 years on a bus is a long time.
And it does. I mean, going back and forth and all that stuff. Um, and then, do you have a favorite memory in all your career? It doesn't have to be junior B or CHL. Like, do you have a favorite hockey memory that just sticks out to you that you just love?
Um, that's tough because I don't know. I really can go to my minor hockey days and think about playing with my buddies that I grew up with. And there's, we ended up playing Bancroft in the Ontario finals. That was fun. Junior hockey, again, playing with Perry Ohm and Kyle McMillan and Sean McKegney and Joe Harris. Like there's still guys I hear from and, you know, run into them and see them and I appreciate them. And then again at the university, good buddies and people that I still see around town here in Windsor that I appreciate winning the Queen's Cup, the Ontario University Championship was probably the most success as far as winning I had in hockey. But to think about the cast of characters and the great people that I met, whether it be in New Mexico or Tulsa, in Birmingham, Alabama, or in Fort Worth. Like my last year was kind of different. That was me going into a team where I didn't know anybody. I didn't have, but just a good group of guys. And I don't know. I appreciate the coaches I had. Gary Unger, I was basically with him 6 out of my 7 years. Again, Sean Clouston was probably the best all-around coach, and that's why he's still, coaching major junior hockey at this today.
And, and they went to
Yeah, I don't know.
Victoria
I
level.
appreciate the guys that I played with. I don't know. It's hard to pick one single thing. I still got a couple buddies that were season ticket holders that I talked to in Tulsa. So it's, I appreciate those things.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and it's funny, like I said, like I was like when I was a kid growing up, you guys were like the idols that I want to be. Like I remember, telling my dad, I want to play hockey. I want to play hockey. He's like, Kyle, I'm not driving an hour to go to Tulsa for you to play hockey. That was it, right? And I was so envious. I was like, but these guys, I'm Canadian. Like this is what I'm supposed to grow up to do. But seeing you guys play, I mean, hats off to you guys. You guys really, in my eyes, like that was probably my favorite memories of hockey in itself is watching you guys play, in Tulsa. And as I'm still in Listowel, like I live in Listowel, right? And I tell people all the time, I was like, oh, Jorin Welsh, he's such a great defenseman growing up. Like, I wish that we kind of could get the players to meet you and stuff. But you know what, Jordan, like really like watching you and Dougie and Jordan or sorry, John and even Mike Moore and like all those players, in today's world just stick out to me, and I'll never forget. Like that was the hockey that I grew up with, the nitty gritty. Jofa, slicked back hair, fun fans that would always just get into it, right? So it was even as a fan and seeing it, you say you enjoyed it, but I really did as somebody watching you guys play. It was a lot of fun, for I'm sure for you, but I really just want to say thank you very much for even trying doing this with me and stuff, and having this conversation. It's nice to actually get to know a player that played semi-professional and did all that stuff, right? So
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, Kyle. Like, I don't know. It was fun. It was fun going to the rink, and you go somewhere new. It was always nice to know somebody was in the stands. You know, to watch you or whatever. To get to know different people. Like, I'm terrible with names and remembering everybody's name, but there's one gentleman would hook us up with golf, but we know that I'd see him where he was sitting and give him a wave or whatever. I was never good at that. I when I played, I didn't look up in the stands, but you get to meet, like I mentioned, I have a couple buddies that I have that I still keep in contact with. Um, Carol Shelton, grandma that was around the Tulsa team, you know, just you meet a lot of good people.
was that
And
sorry to interrupt. Was that the lady that sat next to the penalty box?
no, she was
Okay,
always up
sorry.
kind of in the corner. Yeah.
Because there was that family that sat next to the penalty box, and we were just one above them. And then
Oh yeah.
we moved over right behind the penalty box for the away team. And my dad always said, Kyle, when they come, you just bang that penalty box as hard as you can. And I got a couple of pucks and stuff, but I was just trying to figure out where I thought, because there was that family that sat there, and they always brought
Yeah.
their mom and stuff, right? But that's what I was just
Okay.
asking. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One more
Yeah.
question before I let you go. This
Yeah.
is
No
going to be
problem.
kind of an out of question, but what's your prediction for the Edmonton, Florida series?
Uh, poor old, poor old Edmonton's in tough. I think they got a lot of good. Obviously with McDavid and Draisaitl, they've got a lot of good players, but Florida's deep. Florida. If Edmonton was going to win one of those first two games, it needed to be that first game, and Bobrovsky stood on his head. He was unbelievable. But they're good. I don't know. I think they're in tough, and Skinner's up and down. I don't know. He kind of, not that he didn't fall apart, but he was kind of back to the normal Skinner. There, the second game, he was a little deep in his net and got beat a couple times. I don't know. Neither one's my team. My Colton, my son, he's a Dallas fan, so I was kind of pulling from them. And then Edmonton put Vancouver out before that, and I don't know if I can pull for those guys now.
Well, that Paul Maurice is a good coach.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of respect for those guys. Paul Maurice, and then what's his name in Dallas again? Pete DeBoer.
Yep,
They
yep.
kind of have that. There's a bit of a Windsor connection with that when I believe DeBoer played a little bit for the university at one point, and Maurice when he was with the Spitfires or whatever. So there's a bit of a connection there with those guys. But they're two good young well, they're getting a little older, but good coaches.
And Pete DeBoer
So,
coached also with the Kitchener Rangers there, right? So
mhm,
yeah.
yeah,
So he. But
yeah.
anyways, Jordan, I really want to say thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, for sure. No,
Um,
it is. It's neat to, once in a like I've got that connection where I still talk to a couple buddies. I've ran into Ronayne. I was out last year to visit with Dan Hoffner in Calgary, and
yep,
ran into a couple guys there. So it's nice, and it's been a lot of years since I've been down and visited Tulsa, but Dougie's around, Hamlin's around, Doug Piernack,
yep.
other guys. So
Sly's
yeah,
still down there. There's a
yeah,
bunch of guys
yeah,
that are. It's amazing how many they stayed around, right? But as
yeah.
a fan, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, why is a fan, 20 years from now want to talk to me? But I'm really happy that we did this there, Jordan. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, take care, Kyle.